Happy Sunday, Apple. Hi, Jappers. Hello, and welcome back. So today, well, yesterday we were figuring out where we wanted to put our raised garden beds, doing the math, laying the plans for that, and we found that the best place for us and where for all the other plants that we want to make, that the best place was right there. So we have this giant brush pile that was from limbs and some trees and some other things, just small saplings, that from that cleared area over there when we had our drain field put in, because we had to have the septic completely redone, essentially. So Wyatt's out here with his safety gear. He's got long pants on, boots, he's got a rake, he's got eye protection, he has everything that he needs to keep a fire this size as under control as you can. When it comes to fire, there really is not a lot of control that you can have, but you can try and be as safe as you possibly can be. But it's been pretty dry the past couple days, so this is probably going to burn pretty quick. If you see those little green things, the little green bags there, those were some compost things. We were just throwing it all over here, and surprisingly, this seems to be happening to more people, is... Ooh, it's going!
Yeah.
Look out, Apple. Jasper, come here.
Put them back in the house.
Yeah. Come on. So yeah, that's gonna be a big old bonfire, and we're gonna get our dogs inside. Now they know not to play with fire. We have fires here all the time, but just because it's such a large size, we're gonna go ahead and put them inside. So, come on, pups. Welcome back to the fire. Man, you've really cleared this out, Wyatt.
Wasn't that my job?
Yeah. You did. I'm just saying you did a really good job. I was praising you on your good job.
So one thing I would like to bring up before anybody else tries this: if a fire ever gets to chest height or higher, you cannot just stare at the fire or the ground to make sure that the fire's being contained. You have to stare at the trees around it and the rest of the surroundings also. If Valerie did catch it on video when it was really high, I was also staring at the trees and everything else to make sure that none of the trees were catching on fire, and making sure that the whole surrounding is completely safe, not just where the fire is.
Because once it gets so high, it could jump.
Yeah, that's how forest fires get started. Fires just jump.
Yeah. I think the best advice is
don't start a fire this big.
Don't start fires, you know, unless you have a space that is completely contained and you have all of the preparations that you need. This was contained because Wyatt knows what he's doing.
But it's low enough now that it's a lot easier. I'm just moving stuff onto it so that it keeps going and hopefully clears up this area nice and good.
Mm-hmm. And the ash and everything like that will be really, really good for the soil here. So yeah, like fires, I think fire gets a lot of bad raps just because of how destructive the wildfires have been out west, you know, in Australia and in California and things like that. But in a place like this in Georgia where you have these pine forests, what they do here a lot of the times is something called a controlled burn. And Wyatt mentioned that before, that over near our chicken area, that way he did a controlled burn over a good portion of our land. Now, a controlled burn is basically where you start a forest fire, but you keep an eye on it and you control it. You don't let it get to a point of destruction. You don't let it destroy property. You don't let it hurt wildlife, that sort of thing. Because this area here in particular really kind of is dependent on fire.
And a lot of trees are. They
need
fire to be able to create more trees.
Mm-hmm.
The seeds that fall specifically from pine trees
that big one
have a wax layer basically on them. It's a pine sap layer that the nut does not grow from unless it heats up to a certain temperature.
So whereas, you know, think about it as part of its life cycle, essentially, a lot of the trees, the bigger trees, will not be hurt. It's what happens, it's the dead things that sit on the ground. So the pine needles, the dead leaves, you know, anything like that.
Yeah, if you go and look over at the chicken area, none of the big trees were hurt.
Yeah.
It was just the ground clearing was cleared out. The fire over there got to about this tall at its highest.
Yeah. What happens is it basically is kind of like a garbage sweep. It's going to get all of that trash out of there that's preventing new life from coming up. So you'll notice, like, here, you know, like, or you go into the pine area that hasn't been burned in a long time, and you'll see there's a really thick layer of pine needles. Really, there's nothing can grow through that, because essentially like putting really thick mulch.
Which a lot of people
Did you hear how rude that was? What was that?
A lot of people use pine straw as mulch out here.
Oh yeah, it's just so abundant, and it's so like, you know.
Like, I could go out here and get as much pine straw as I wanted.
Yeah.
And put it on our new garden beds and not have to go get mulch ever.
Yeah, because the mulch is going to prevent weeds, and like Wyatt has said before, weeds are just plants you don't want in that area. So whereas when you burn the area, you're going to open it up for new plants, new growth, which is inherently great for the forest and for wildlife and things like that.
And great for the animals living there, like you said, wildlife, but it allows like more bushes, like the raspberry bushes and the blackberry bushes that are very abundant down here, at least. And it also allows for deer bushes, which is one of the more, we'll get a video of that later, more abundant ones down here also, but it allows the nature to have more food than coming onto your property and eating your vegetables.
So over that direction, that's the wildlife preserve. That's the, it's on a national, it's a wildlife management area. It's essentially like a large park that the state of Georgia has kind of sectioned off. It says wildlife protection, it's wildlife management, not just wildlife protection. So people do go hunting. You can go hunting in there with the right license and the right, you know, registration.
It's a matter of just signing up online, honestly. They just want to know who's going to be out there, how many animals you're, taking out of the population, so that they can have a census of where the population is at.
So a fun job that I didn't know existed until moving down here is called a wildlife manager. Now, a wildlife manager is essentially it's almost like a park ranger, but not quite. So a wildlife manager is in charge of managing wildlife. So they keep track of, one or more types of species, the numbers that they have, and if they are getting too low, they take measures to protect that species. And if you're in the case of, like, say, you've probably heard like white-tailed deer, their populations start getting too high, they then start encouraging hunting and taking measures to keep the balance of the wildlife in a certain region. So I thought that was a super neat job. I've never heard of that before. So that's kind of what that job, or what that place is for. So if the deer get too abundant over there, they really are encouraging people to go hunting. If they're not doing so much, they may slow that down. But yeah, so that area over there is not ours. We do not burn over there. We don't do anything over there except for walk around, except for go on walks and enjoy the nature. So yeah, the only time we've ever done a controlled burn is on our own property in a very controlled setting. I'm just trying to emphasize that, while, because of the area that we're in, a controlled burn is a really good thing, but it's not okay
for every area.
It's not okay for every area, and it's not okay for every person to do it.
Like
really
in California, still right now, controlled burns are not allowed.
Yeah.
And they're actually sending people in to try to clear up the brush. Instead, I personally think it's stupid. I think that controlled fires would take less manpower, cost less money, and make the forest healthier.
I imagine that they're at the point of so much brush that any controlled burn would be uncontrollable,
That's why there's those giant forest fires out in California.
Yeah, all this white, is this like ash or is this bugs? Because it looks like bugs.
All the white's ash.
Okay, good. Like, I just see a bunch of things like, but I'm thinking bugs probably can't fly in that
The bugs
heat.
are going to be black.
Okay.
If you see black flying around your smoke, it's bugs.
Okay. Apple wants to come outside so bad. She wants to come outside. That's Jasper.
What you doing?
Jappers. Yeah, I can't believe how fast that burned down.
Well,
I mean, you started this like maybe an hour ago. You haven't been out here that long.
The more fuel that you have right at the beginning, the less amount of time you're going to have for the fire. That's why if you're out in the wild, don't do a big fire. Do a very small controlled fire. You only want it about, the width of your chest, and you only want it about a foot to 2 feet tall, because that's going to give you plenty of heat through the night, and it's going to preserve your wood storage, so you don't have to go out in the middle of the night 12, 13 times just to get more wood.
Oh, okay. So this is I'm gonna kind of call myself out on this one. Does a bigger fire burn hotter?
Yeah.
Okay.
It uses more energy and it's burning hotter.
Okay. That sounds like this is the dumbest question I've ever asked. But like, you really don't. But a fire burns really hot anyway. So if you're trying to like cook something, heat up a can of food or something like that, you don't really need that big of a fire. A little flame will do it. If
you ever go to the camping section in Walmart, there's the little camping canisters that say like 1 hour fires and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are just fine. You get like a little stand that goes right above them, put a can on top of it, or even a pot, and it will cook everything that you need.
I want to cook stuff on a fire. I never really cooked stuff on a fire. Remember how I was telling you my Girl Scout story? All right, hang on. I got a story. I was in Girl Scouts. Wyatt was in Boy Scouts. Girl Scouts was not what I thought it was going to be. All right, I'll just mention that. I wanted to learn the way of the... They've escaped. They've escaped. Are y'all serious? You moved the gate, didn't you, Apple?
Hi, little girl.
Oh, she knows. She's like, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Buddy.
Hi, buddy.
Bubby's like, I don't want nothing to do with none of this. I'm out here to go pee. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Okay. Ignore my dogs in the background. They're probably going to dead leg me because they love doing that. But I was in Girl Scouts and we went to camp like one time, like a stay away camp, a couple days, where we actually stayed in a tent. Oh my goodness, what'd I say, dead legging me? Go on and play away from my legs, please. Are you serious? Are you serious? So while I was in Girl Scouts, we went to camp one time, and prior to going to the camp, there was this, we made it into like a little bit of a competition, a cooking competition where me and the other girls, we all had to bring in one thing that could be made over a fire. And then the best one would get like, I think a merit badge, or we got to make it while we were at camp. And so, I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, I got to do this thing. And he's like, Hobo Pies. Hobo Pies are going to be the best thing. So a Hobo Pie is essentially, I think I'll make it on the channel probably.
It's also called a tinfoil dinner.
It's also called a tinfoil dinner, or probably, there's probably a lot of names, but that's what my dad called it. That's what I call it. So that's what I call it. And essentially it's just, you take some aluminum foil, you add in some ground beef, some potatoes, green beans, other vegetables, basically just like canned items, and some beef or some chicken or things like that. Essentially it's just throw in basically what you would have for dinner, put some seasonings on it, things like that, a little bit of oil or butter, wrap it up really, really tight, throw it into like a fire. You can let it sit on the coals, let it cook, take it out, and you've got dinner. So I thought that was great. I brought it there. We cooked it in an oven because we were at, I think, the Girl Scout leader's, her house. We didn't have a fire at that time, but it was to test for if we were going to have a fire. I don't think that I should have won, but the person that did win, I was so upset because the person that won with a cake. Now the cake recipe was doable out in the wild. Like it was basically like a 2-ingredient, like orange soda and things like that. Great cool recipe. Not that anything wrong with the cake. The cake was delicious. I don't know how a bunch of 12-year-old girls were supposed to make this cake over a fire. That's what I didn't understand. I was so upset. I was so upset. I threw a fit. I went home and I cried. And then I think actually afterwards, my dad set up a fire in the backyard so we could actually make it in the backyard. Which, like, A+ dad. Like, I was so sad because we didn't get to make my thing at the camp. And we didn't make it at the camp either. We didn't make that cake at the camp because you can't make cake at camp. What we did end up making is we got these little things that we made grilled cheeses with. That was cool. They're just a bunch of rascals. All right. Back to cleaning.